All righty. Hello, I'm Shakia. This is the Jubilees Discussion Group, and we have Jasmine and we have Marquita. Um, okay, so we'll just get into it. So whoever wants to go first, feel free. You can jump in or chime in. So the first point is to discuss the key concepts that had an impact on your understanding of the projects completed in this class. You can talk about how learning material helped you better understand how to develop brand identity, help you as a designer in the future, how has learning material changed your perspective about the industry, and so on and so forth. So whoever wants to go first, they can, or either I can go first.
Oh,
Um,
well, I was about to say, I guess what I've learned so far from just this entire process together is that and truly understanding the concept of brand identity and the importance of realizing that it's not about the logo itself, and you have to look at it as a whole vibe and a message of the brand and how the brand communicates. The logo is just one part of a bigger picture when it comes to branding. And you have to, it's crucial to do proper research and figure out the target audience and maybe even checking out, the different competitors to kind of give you an idea of how your brand should communicate in whatever particular field you're creating the brand for. That way, it really shapes how the design is crafted and everything comes together. So for me, it's just the creating the persona and the design briefs helped me focus on what I was wanted my brand to communicate.
mhm.
So that's what I've learned so far from this class.
My takeaway from the class is more so, I, I guess for me, I keep having these what I like to call aha moments. Is how you experience things, but you don't realize that this is why you were doing it like this, or this is why this was like that. And so mine was like just things when you think about like the audience psychographics. And so I am doing like the Mandy Madison concert tour, and just thinking about how to focus on the emotional connection with the tour. And how do you do that with the tour? But you go to concerts, or you've gone to a concert for a particular artist, and you're going there and it's going to be this type of vibe, but
Mhm.
you don't realize that as the audience, I'm going to this concert for this type of vibe. But now as the designer, it's like, oh, this is what's going to produce this type of vibe.
Mhm.
So you think about like Beyonce and the Renaissance tour, and everybody went and got like the cowboy hats and but that was because the design was made for Cowboy Carter. And
Mhm.
so everybody wearing cowboy boots and metallic and all the things for that type of vibe for the concert, but the designer was responsible for establishing that type of connection. And so for me, it was just like getting like now it's on me to make sure that when you're dealing with different brands and things like that, that you establish that type of connection,
Mhm.
um, versus actually experiencing it on
Mhm.
the other end. So
I definitely agree with the both of you. For me, just understanding that like the small details matter, when creating like branding for brands, whether that's the logo, the, motion graphic, vision boards, like creative briefs. Um, it's the small things that matter. And like you said, Jasmine, like the logo is just like tiny percentage of everything. And like you said, Marquita, like the whole entire like experience that the brand may have like a goal for its audience to experience, whether it's a product or a service of some sort, like they have that defined well before anything else is established or designed. And then also everything from like vocabulary to color, shape, all has an effect on an audience.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like I said, like however the brand wants the audience to respond, and in some cases, even if I feel like as a designer, we may have the intentions for an audience to respond in a certain kind of way, there's always going to be other aspects to where the audience may respond differently.
Yeah.
Um, so having to keep that in mind and keep an open mind for that. Also, um, the logo creation process is a lot more tedious, than I expected. It wasn't just something just like, oh, well, I want to put this, I want to put that. It was like everything had to make sense. Like it all
Mhm.
had to make sense. So like from sketching to like the storyboard recently, and just realizing that there's more that go into it than just the way a logo looks. And understanding that it represents the brand and it has to all make sense and not just look pretty, but it has to have a meaning behind it. And I'm doing the exact same thing, the Mandy Madison. So I can definitely relate when it came to just doing the research and trying to understand like um what type of experience or how to convey that experience through the branding because it's not a product where I feel like a product it may be a bit more easier. Rather, it's considered like I guess it is considered a service or
Yeah.
providing like an entertainment. So I feel like that was a challenge in its own, which is why I chose that because I wanted to sort of challenge myself a little bit differently. Um, Instead of, trying to, represent a product, but I definitely agree with you all 10 times. Um, what else? Has any of the learning material changed your perspective about the industry at all?
Yes.
Hmm.
I have a greater appreciation, I guess, with being the person that's responsible for creating that memorable experience. So I have a greater appreciation for the thought process, the research that has to go into it, and those little details.
Hmm.
So yeah, 'cause, because I mean, I date a musician, and that was the other, like, oh my goodness, like I date a musician, and when I asked him, I was like, oh, that was different, and I could just tell the difference when, it's a good day or a bad day or a good gig or bad or whatever, and he was like, oh, I play with feels. Well, now I understand what the whole playing with feels like. He's playing to give the emotional connection, and so now it's just like, oh you
Yeah,
know the
yeah,
responsibility is this way, not on necessarily the artist that's singing. They play a part too,
yeah,
but it has to have a look that
exactly.
gives that
Yeah,
connection. So yeah.
I definitely agree. Um, I think my perspective is the same. Um, and like you said, it does give me a greater appreciation for people who like who are creative, production or in creative production or creative producers. Um, it just gives me a total just appreciation for the industry as a whole because it's not just there's many moving parts and there's so many different positions and avenues that literally has to come together in order to make a brand or a business work effectively and for it to succeed and for it to provide the solutions to whatever the audience or its customer base may be needing solutions for. So I definitely agree. What about you, Jasmine?
I think my perspective has changed because I kind of realized that it is going to be somewhat of a challenge and a lot of work, um, creating any type of branding. But it's like when you start actually doing it, it's like the realization is like, oh, this really is a lot of work. But it's like I do, so it didn't change. Like I know it, but it doesn't hit you until you actually start trying to create something, especially something from scratch. like from thin air. It's like, okay, like
Yeah.
most of my time is spent trying to get my brain to start working and produce something.
Exactly. I think this is a great segue into the next question. So it says discuss the challenges encountered while completing your brand projects in this course. I would have to say for me, the main challenges that I had, like you just stated, Jasmine, like having something, like having an idea in your brain of like how you want the logo to look like, and then having it to put it on paper, which that was sort of easy for me to do. Like once I got into the swing of like getting my ideas out and, putting it on paper. But when it came to putting it, actually creating it on the computer, is where I was like, I gotta reteach myself how to use like this application, which I had to sort of reach back to like undergrad and then of course like the previous courses that we've taken so far. And then, thank God for YouTube University.
Yeah.
Just for just the small little things I'm trying to figure out how to maneuver through and like what to use and how to trace. And so just executing it, like putting it on getting the idea from my mind to the computer and it looking as good as it possibly could has been the main challenge for me. And I know I'm gonna have a challenge when I start this animation, but we gonna pray.
Well, my hurdle was coming up with the concepts, but also sitting down and actually critiquing myself to figure out what is that I need to change because I don't think I've ever actually done that before. So that was a challenge because I think I spent most of the time to figure out, okay, what should I change? Like, I don't know how to properly critique myself. Like, it's easier to take somebody else's advice and apply it, but when I gotta do it for myself, it's like I'm kind of lost. So
Mhm.
that was my biggest hurdle.
Mine's or was and slash is more so. I don't think I have done it in such done this process in such great detail.
Mhm.
I I haven't done all the steps.
Mhm.
So this was having the time to sit there and create 30 of these and then take these and then do this and create this. I think it's like, oh, I got to come up with a logo. And yeah, I may have done a few sketches and changed some stuff, but now we got to present it. And so now you got to see what I know what this really is. And so now I got to put it out there for
Yeah.
somebody else to see. And then you got to be able to read it. I know what I said, but I know what that means,
Yeah.
and so it's all the steps that's been the like, oh, yeah, no, I don't think I was doing, or maybe I was doing that, but not in that detail.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
because I've created logos for, I've done brands and all that stuff, and now it's just like, okay, I don't think I was doing that, or maybe I was, but not to where it was like, do 30 of these, do
Mhm.
6 of these, now take 2 of those. Now, the step by step by step by step. And it's like, oh, okay. So I think that was like the biggest challenge for me. And I get it, it's the practicing of it all. I just, it's just not when it's not what you're used to.
Yeah, it's an adjustment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you all feel like you're gonna overcome these challenges, or how have you all overcame them if you have overcame them? I think for me, it's just gonna take practice of just me doing it over and over and over again, whether that's just creating logos, for myself on my own. Um, Maybe doing, creating logos for other people just to get more hands-on experience in the applications and things of that nature. And like you said, Marquita, just practicing that process over and over again until I'm just like, it's just clockwork and I just know what I'm doing. I think that's gonna be the way that I can overcome just executing it from my mind to the computer. I think that's gonna be
I
the
think for me, it's more of, yes, practice and just keep doing it over and over. But a part of me not doing it before now is because I didn't know all the steps to do
hmm
for now. So that's the other part to it. That's the overcoming. Like, you're not used to it because you haven't been doing it because you didn't know to do it. So just now knowing the process and making it a part of what you do.
hmm
Uh,
hmm
Yeah, I have to agree with both of you. I think with time and then more experience, then you get kind of in the flow of things. It'll improve. So it just takes time.
Definitely agree. Okay, so our next point is each of us should find a brand that has not been mentioned in the course and compare it to the design concepts from this month's case studies. Um, so I don't mind going first. The brand that I chose, which we all know, I normally tend to go for fashion brands just because that's like my go-to. I love clothes and fashion and stuff. But however, I decided to switch it up. So I'm going with Chick-fil-A. Um, so basically, I felt like the Chick-fil-A logo has definitely changed over time, which I think I can share my screen just so that I can show y'all exactly. Y'all let me know. Can y'all see that?
yes.
Yeah.
So, as y'all can see, the logo basically, it went through different phases from like 1960. I didn't know Chick-fil-A was that old, to be honest. Um, but I feel like with this particular brand, Chick-fil-A, um, the brand was in theme style and connected with the emotion of what they was trying to, say, especially in the beginning, just saying like this is the best thing ever um happened to chicken. And you know how they say like they use the cow to advocate for eating more chicken, which I thought that was super smart just as a brand, just funny and stuff. But I like how the logo sort of went from a more of an animated, illustrative logo to more of a typographic one. So now we just sort of see how they transition from having a chicken to actually creating like sort of their own typeface to include the chicken within the C. And I felt like that was very, very creative on their end. Um, and I do find that with Chick-fil-A, they use, which I don't really notice, or maybe I just haven't really paid attention, but I feel like a lot of brands don't really use typefaces that are like cursive, or if it is, it's maybe somebody's signature, but it's not really used for many brands in my opinion. But I like how they used it because it's different. I feel like a lot of brands sort of just use just a structured typeface that's easy to read. And that was something that I sort of struggled with my logo creation, was like thinking I wanted to use a font that was more creative and was just more like, you know, I guess you can say exaggerated or dramatic, but just thinking about like, is it readable? Will people be able to read it from a distance? Um, or whatever the case may be. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing this. Um, so that was my thought process, but that was mainly my takeaways with the Chick-fil-A as pertaining to their logo and their branding. Um, and it stands out like when you see that C, even if you just see the C, you're gonna know it's Chick-fil-A. And I also like not to mention how they transition from even using like their colors, which I know a lot of food brands use red as a way to entice customers to be hungry and to want to eat. So yeah.
So the brand that I chose was Fisher Price.
Hmm.
They also adapted their logo over the years. I did not know they've been around since the 1930s. And if you see like I would say the first five versions of their logos, it really doesn't give a toy company. Um, so I think, hold on. Yeah, they kind of simplified their logos because a lot of the beginning logos had they focused on using the F and the P, and they have like a little face within the letter F, and it honestly kind of looks weird. So it was actually a good idea to just step back and scale it down and just make it a simple word mark logo within, I don't know, it's like a little cloud
Hmm.
type of shape. And I noticed that's something when I was searching toy companies, a lot of them kind of gravitates more towards word mark logos and kind of, yeah, like those first logos, I would have never thought they were for a kid's branding.
Mm-mm. But even now, like when I look at it now, like the only way you're gonna know it's like a kid's brand is just by knowing that it's a kid's brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they didn't use like a actual toy, they didn't use any type of icon. It's just, but I wonder like what was their thought process and even simplifying the way that it looks from going from what 1962 to like 1984, like what made them change that it sort of looked like, I don't know, a candy wrapper.
Maybe
It's
they realized it was kind of creepy because if you look at the logos from 1957 to 84, it looked like they were trying to form a smiley face. With
oh,
the eyes, the F and the P, and then Fisher Price Toys is making the smile, but it kind of looks creepy, to, at least to me anyway.
I get that.
No, but this is like them evolving and sometimes scaling back and doing simple is always the best with logos because it's easy to remember. And I think with for them with time and the years and people getting familiar with their brand, it kind of allowed them to scale back and be simple and realize, okay, Fisher Price is kind of a household name for children's toys.
Mhm.
So that the name alone just people are allowed to remember and remember the logo because it's such a simple and red is actually it grabs your attention quicker than any color. So I think this is actually a good overhaul in how they, I guess, marketed themselves to family and for their toys.
Mhm. I also noticed with the logo that they have now, they went from lowercasing the first letters in Fisher and Price
Oh
and
yeah.
changed the color a little bit. And they went from like four of these little things to only three. So you're definitely right. They even still simplified it a bit.
Okay. Well, so mine's my comparison was musician to musician, basically. I the brand I chose was Michael Jackson and
Mhm.
his concerts and things like that. So, he created like larger than life concert experiences. His performances was not just about the music, and it when you see it to this day, it was timeless.
Mhm.
You know when you see the glove or when you see the hat or just his silhouette, like
Mhm.
you know that that's Michael Jackson. And just all his concerts were always about the emotional experience. Even when you see back in the day concerts, you see people crying, falling out, being carried out of there. It's like, what is going on? And even his silhouettes are images of his dance moves.
Mhm.
You know it when you see it, you know what the concert is going to be like.
Mhm.
And so just the connection, the emotional connection that he had, which was like, so you think about him not having to have words with his logos and you knowing it, like the brand recognition from that, and just trying to apply that to with Mandy Madison tour, like knowing it when you see it or knowing it's gonna be like, I think I use more so like the neon lights, the glow, the things like that, like a glow party, so to speak, just to so you know it when you see it. Like I know it's gonna be like a good time.
Hmm.
Um, and so like just Michael Jackson's costume, his elements, the glittering glove, the military inspired jackets, they were his brand symbols. And
Hmm.
I think one of mine was like the rock symbol.
Hmm.
And when Dr. B actually gave feedback on that, he was like, okay, I can see that on the stage because it's holding like a lightning bolt. But that's
Hmm.
just like America's Got Talent or The Voice or whatever, how they have that symbol in the back on the stage. And you just don't, just seeing how all this stuff, just the visual aesthetics just play into the brand where you just can recognize it when you see it and you just know the feeling you're going to have when you attend the concert. Michael Jackson's concert or whatever. It's years later and you seeing videos going viral of
Yeah.
babies that like you weren't even born when Michael Jackson was here, dancing the Thriller, you
Yeah.
know.
But yeah, so here is a couple of just pulling up some of his world tour like logos and things. And you are right. Some of it used his silhouette, but you always know like this silhouette is always very
Mhm.
popular. This one is um
Him on his toes. Yep.
yep, that one right there. And I also like I think the difference between like a brand that has like a product or whether it's food or a product versus like a brand that that's providing like a service, but especially with entertainment, I feel like you can be a little bit more creative when it comes to singers or musicians and things of that nature when it comes to like branding because every logo is different
Yeah.
for every single tour. Like this one, you see an M, but you don't see him, but that was probably given, that may have been, well, let's say like a tribute concert, right? Then you got
Mhm.
that's you see his silhouette, and you got the Dangerous World Tour, you only see his eyes, like that's different. Um, let's see if there's another one. This one sort of, I like this one. This one sort of look like a patch that could go on a jacket or something. Um, so he definitely had varieties for sure.
I think his logos and his image, his symbolism and imagery evolved with him as an artist.
Hmm.
So as he changed, because I mean, of course, as he was a child star, and so as he grew and as he evolved, so did the symbols, the
Hmm.
symbolism, So everything like that one, the Japan looking one, that was reminds me of like Remember the Times,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was around that time, probably. So and Michael Jackson Bad. That's crazy because that was in 88 and I was born in 84. And so just
Yeah.
remembering that stuff or Thriller came out, I think in 84. And,
Yeah.
like I said, kids are dancing to that. You see that red jacket, you know that somebody's
Yep.
going to do the Thriller dance.
A
So,
red jacket, shoes, socks,
yeah,
gloves.
yeah,
Like he definitely branded himself for sure, and that's gonna be remembered forever.
yeah,
And I think that's like the main purpose when it comes to just branding for a brand. The ultimate goal is for the audience to identify exactly who it is, what it provides, the feeling that it may provide for the audience. Like as soon as you see it, you already know like what's gonna come with you. You already know what type of service you're gonna get. You already know what type of product you're gonna get. You already know what you're gonna feel. Like you said, in some cases, the vibe. Um, if it's in your case like Jasmine, like with the toy company, you already know you're gonna get a great quality product of a toy. Um, so I think those are like the main goals for when it comes to just like branding as a whole.
Yeah, to be able to recognize it. I always say like kids seeing McDonald's and they can't even read, but they know it's McDonald's when you pass by
Them golden arches.
it. Like you can't even read, but you know that that's McDonald's, so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of anything else. Well, I think in the case studies, they talked about like Twitter, how Twitter went from you can identify like the Twitter bird, like you know that that's Twitter when you see the
yeah.
bird. Or even in previous courses, like when you hear like the sound bite for Netflix, you know it's Netflix. So it's interesting how we can identify it through like how we, through our eyes, but we can also identify it through
Sound. Yeah.
like through
Mhm.
sound. Um, like you don't even have to see it, and you hear the sound. You are, yep, I know what that is.
Let your cash app go off.
And
You know?
yes, or even like if you have a Shopify, like and you somebody done purchased something out of your store, you already know what that is too. That sound bite is noticeable too. But that is true. And even if you want to take it a step further, like even your Apple, like your phone, like when you know the sound when somebody hang up that dun dun dun, or like when you open up your phone or when you close your phone or when you get a text message, like there's just certain unique
Yeah.
sound with Apple versus like Android or any other phone, that is identifiable. Like I know that you have an iPhone by just the way I
Mhm.
hear your ringtone you may use or just the way, our phones work. So definitely, Brandon is all around us
Yeah.
for sure. Okay, let me see. Okay, so it says we have 5 minutes and about 19 seconds to go. So we can let this time run out. We can go to the next point, and if we need to reconvene, we can just hop off and then hop back in um to, finish our discussion if we need to. Um, but okay, so our last thing for us to discuss is using the concepts for the class, brainstorm the possible logos that could be connected to your group name. So Jubilee. So what were some things that came to mind for you all?
Honestly, for me, I don't know because what exactly is a jubilee? Like, that's the first hurdle in order to come up with a solid logo.
Yeah,
What is a jubilee?
I had to do my own research.
Uh,
So Jubilee apparently it represents celebration, liberation, restoration, and reconciliation. And then there's also a biblical definition. Let me see if I can pull it up. A biblical definition for it, and uh, but that was just like the main thing that I got um from it because I had to do research too. What is that?
So, well, while you're pulling that up, so where I'm from, or where I am, we used to have this thing called Jubilee Jam,
Mhm.
and it was a festival.
Mhm.
And basically, and you had all these artists that came and they were literally, another one artist after the next hitting the stage. And so, but it was like you had vendors, food vendors and all this stuff, but it was like they called it Jubilee Jam. So when I think about Jubilee, I think my mind goes back to Jubilee Jam. And I want to say that the logo for it was like a jester, a carnival jester type thing, or like with the horn in hand. And it was like, oh, you going to Jubilee Jam? And it was like, yeah, I'm. So I think about like being happy or celebrating. And so when I think of like logo, I think of you can have a typography one and more so in the happy colors, in the carnival colors. You want to say red and yellow or, things like that. Because I think of festival. And so when you did the research and it says like an anniversary, special occasion, those are celebrations to me. So that's just what came to mind for me.
Yes, okay. So I looked up Jubilee Jam And yeah, a lot of stuff with music came into play. Also, somehow Juneteenth is
Mm.
connected to that. Um, yeah, celebrate like it's basically just like celebrating something. But Google says, okay, so the biblical origins, or say Jubilee refers to the special anniversary, particularly a 50th or 25th one, or a celebration of such an anniversary with the roots in both Jewish and Christian traditions. So it's like, I guess so at a 50th anniversary or a 25th anniversary, it would be considered like,
The Jubilee.
okay,
Mhm.
that makes sense. Um, yeah, and that's pretty much. Yeah, anniversary celebration. If I could think of like any type of like logos or anything like that, as far as like Jubilee, I think I would want to do something illustrative. Um, just
Mhm.
because, well, yeah, start off, if I was just to start from our process, I would start with something illustrative, and my goal was to get to something like a typography. Um, type of logo to make it stand out or make it noticeable to where people are going to automatically identify it. But I don't really know how else um I would express that. I think this one's sort of like difficult. This would definitely be a challenge for me to come up with ideas for sure.
So, like I was saying before, that this- what- that that the logo definitely needs to be an emblem style logo
Mhm.
to properly educate people, to let them know what it is and what type of event it is, because it is an outdated term. Because I personally, I'm 32 and I've never heard a party be described as a Jubilee celebration or anything. Maybe just in the areas from where I'm from and people just do use different terms, so that could be it, but it just feels like something my grandparents would have used to describe their parties or their get-togethers or whatever. So I think for the newer generation, if you were just to have like a simple word mark that they might not get what exactly is this. I think it's a Jubilee.
There's actually there's one of my friends, she has a dance company, and every year for Juneteenth she puts on a basically a show. But it's called Juba. And that makes so much sense because we're celebrating Juneteenth. And I think instead of her calling it Jubilee, it's just called Juba. So I think that that's sort of like a creative way or spin off on having the same concept of like celebration, but also making the word not using like the historic word, but switching
Yeah,
up the term of it and just saying Juba, that's easy to remember is I feel like it sounds cooler than Jubilee.
yeah.
It's just two syllables, so it's just like straight to the point. So that just honestly just pinpointed in my mind. Um, who would y'all feel like the target audience would be
Older
for
people.
Jubilee? What'd you say?
I said older people. Unless you do what you said about shortening the name and kind of making it more modern, and then it can be geared towards younger, the younger crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the lineup was always various genres.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So it like I said, this went on, this wasn't just like this was a 2-day event.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had your lineup. So you could have had like country music in the morning, you can have R&B by night, you can have, you know, I think, and I was like, what really did happen in Jubilee Jam? Because of course, when it went away, I was younger. So, you just see that it stopped coming and I see somebody ran off with the money, but okay. Um, People were saying I saw Little Richard there. I saw, it was going on in the 90s and they saw like big time artists, and then you saw your locals, or you saw, and so I think that's why it attracted so many people, because it appealed to the audience was
Every
everybody. It
yeah.
was something for everybody.
Hmm.
Yeah, but what do you do with an outdoors event when it rains and people don't come? So
Yeah.
your money, you lose money or whatever, and that's just the business side of it. But it literally, the audience was everybody, because it just was a matter of what day you were going to go. But I think they do that with our local fair that comes every year.
Mhm.
Um, people's The fair is here 2 weeks. They make sure it's here 14 days,
Mhm.
and there's somebody performing each night. And so people just generally pick what night they're gonna go to see whoever it is. So they had, I think, like this past year, they had Lionel Richie there one night, but they also had, a rapper there on another night. They also had a country music on another night, so because the fair is for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So this got my gears turning. Where I am from, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, we have what is called River Bend, and it's sort of like the same concept where it's normally a week long. You have like Sunday it's like gospel, so they'll have like there's like family day, you have food trucks, you have, they have multiple stages. Sort of like a miniature version of like, I guess any other musical festival like Rolling Loud or there's another one that's really popular here in Tennessee. And it's just like in a big field, like in the middle of nowhere. I don't know why I'm drawing a draw. Um, but if I could think of elements within, since we're sort of on the concept of like music or like celebrating, having people come together, maybe maybe having like hands together or just something that's gonna express just everyone coming together or just inclusivity and diversity, inclusion, um, because it's just like maybe like a melting pot that may be something cool to do just because it's a melting pot of different genres, a melting pot of different people, ages, perspectives, psychographics, demographics, um, all coming together to celebrate one thing, which could be music, it could be a certain holiday, it could be, it's just, I think that's like interesting. You could do a lot um with the Jubilee term for sure.
That idea.
Um, well, I think that honestly is it, you guys. Do any of you all have any last words or anything
I
bef-
do not.
before I end the discussion or before I end the recording?
No.
All righty. Well, I'm gonna end the recording.